This PragerFU is a response to Dennis Prager's essay, Maybe Nature Shouldn't Be Worshipped After All. I think this pandemic is really getting to Dennis and taking its toll on his already faltering intellectual faculties. The first part of this article is nothing but classic strawmanning, beginning with one of Dennis's favorite and oft-repeated quotes. When people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything. Here's the thing, Den. A handful of us have realized that you don't have to believe in or worship anything or anyone. Instead, you can simply ask for evidence of this or that, and based on that evidence, either embrace or reject a claim or idea. Even then, new evidence can continue to impact our initial decision, allowing us to change our minds should we find new evidence that points in another direction. And when the evidence is either lacking or points in no clear direction, we've learned to simply shrug and say we don't know, rather than imagining unseen, unknown actors like gods, demons, fairies, or the truly elusive moderate Republican. These are the insights of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, which have been kept from you, Dennis, by your own willful ignorance. These techniques and understandings create rational actors who neither dismiss everything with malice nor embrace what is not yet demonstrable. They are also the basis of intellectual honesty. You'll need to look that one up. In reality, that's another thing you might have to look up. A failure to embrace these ideas is what leads people to believe anything. Silly things like an all-good God who creates a natural world filled with an immeasurable amount of injustice and suffering for the sentient beings he creates and supposedly loves. Dennis goes on to really stick it to folks like me, calling us just about the worst thing imaginable. It's truly disgusting and genuinely out of bounds when it comes to decent, respectful, rational discourse. It's just gross, Den, and totally beneath you, but here it is. Environmentalism, for most of its adherents, is a secular religion. For some reason, the religious find nothing quite so disparaging or biting as accusing a secularist or her worldview of being religious. I guess the religious know better than anyone how awful it is to be a dogmatic Dunning-Kruger-esque buffoon incapable of yielding to reason. The kind of dogmatic Dunning-Kruger-esque buffoon only religion can produce. They obviously know that nothing else comes close to the absurdity and willful ignorance of religion. If there were another word to convey that thick-witted intransigence, they'd use that word instead. But no, it's always religion. Atheism is a religion. Environmentalism is a religion. Liberalism is a religion. Someone needs to tell Dennis that I know you are, but what am I is not a clever retort beyond the third grade. It's not even clever then, it's just understandable coming from an 8-year-old. But since you've already gone there, Den, let me tell you something, my old friend. Judaism is a religion. Christianity is a religion. You embrace religion. And you don't have to tell people like me how f***ing stupid religion is. We get it. Now please, stop punching yourself in the face, you follower, advocate, and practitioner of religion. Dennis goes on to tell us about the most radical idea in history. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth contains the most radical idea in history. Really, the most radical idea? It wasn't the idea that we're moving around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. It wasn't the idea that we evolved from earlier life forms or the germ theory of disease. It wasn't relativity or quantum physics. Democritus thought everything was made of bits of matter so small we couldn't see them 2,500 years ago. Is that not far more radical, Dennis? By the way, all of those ideas have the added value of being true. Dennis goes on to say that human beings could not have come up with this most radical idea 2,500 years ago, suggesting it must have been inspired by God. But given the fact that gods at that time in history were largely about power, control, and whose god could beat up the other gods, it was inevitable that some group would either leap or stumble onto the idea that their God was the creator of everything. the biggest of all the gods.
Oh, you are so big.
I'm not even sure if Dennis is correct here, but if so, the Hebrews were simply the first to say infinity plus one. A God who creates everything is simply the logical end product of that ever-escalating trajectory where people try to overpower the gods of the other tribes and peoples. That trajectory ends there because not even a God who creates everything can actually create everything plus one.
So absolutely huge.
Now here's where Dennis dives headfirst into the stupid pool. Genesis gets even worse. For us Gaia-worshipping types who care about the environment, when God tells human beings to be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, he goes on, nature, it turns out, is not our friend, let alone a God. If it were up to nature, we'd all be dead. No, we wouldn't. You know how I know? Because it is up to nature and we're not all dead. There's no evidence of any God protecting us from nature, Den. And if God does exist, he's the asshole that created nature in such a vicious, inhospitable way where you think we'd all be dead if it were up to nature. The nonsense continues. Animals would eat us. They do, Dennis. Weather would freeze us to death. It does, Dennis. Disease would wipe out the rest of us. It's trying to do that very thing right this very second. If we don't subdue nature, nature will subdue us. It's that simple. Yes, Dennis, it is that simple. And who again created that nature? Remember that radical idea about a God who creates everything, including nature? The nature you just said was designed to kill us all? That's the all-loving God you believe in and worship, despite the fact that he clearly has created a natural world that's
filled with an immeasurable amount of injustice and suffering.
That's your voice there, Dennis. Do you recognize it? Prager goes on. Nature is beautiful and awe-inspiring. It's also brutal and merciless. Nature red in tooth and claw, as Alfred Tennyson aptly describes it. Nature follows no moral rules and shows no compassion. Exactly. It's almost as if no benevolent being whatsoever had a hand in any of it, right? Dennis, if you were an all-loving being with all power, creating a place for your children, sentient beings capable of being harmed by an immeasurable amount of injustice and suffering, would you create a place that's brutal and merciless? Would you create a place with no moral rules or compassion? The only thing I can think of more brutal, merciless, immoral, and lacking in compassion than nature is the creator of that nature, the tribal war god of Abraham, who Dennis not only believes in, but, wait for it, worships. Dennis goes on and on. The basic law of all natural life is survival of the fittest, while the basic law of Judaism and Christianity is the opposite, the survival of the weakest with the help of the fittest. Yes, and the religions based on the tribal war god of Abraham have been so good to what religious folks like you, Dennis, used to refer to as the weaker sex, who make up half the population. That's also why Christianity, which ruled Western Europe for 1,000 years, was so widely known for its compassion towards the poor and the outstretched hand of help from the strong and wealthy. For f***'s sake, Dennis, your political party, which was taken over by the, wait for it again, religious, is cutting aid to the poor during a worldwide pandemic and keeping healthcare options closed to the poorest among us, while your party is in court trying to take healthcare away from 18 million Americans, including provisions for pre-existing conditions. Again, during a global pandemic. The fittest caring for the weakest is not a Judeo-Christian ideal in practice, Dennis. You're even pushing to get the economy back up, knowing that your God's nature will kill more of the weakest among us. The old, the compromised, the poor, the otherwise disadvantaged. Read people of color, and blacks in particular. If you genuinely like the idea of the strongest helping the weakest, you're in the wrong f***ing party. Finally, Dennis, if you really do want to subdue nature, you're also in the wrong business. Thoughts and prayers, magical potions and spells can't subdue anything. The Mormon Church has already held 2 global fasts to end the pandemic, which advances almost as if Mormons had continued eating 3 square meals a day. There is a group of people who have been subduing nature for the last 400 years. Scientists who've made it their business to understand and remedy the very worst parts of nature, rather than seeing the natural world as God's will, a tool he uses to punish us, which therefore should not be tampered with. Those folks have been telling your God, the creator of nature, to go fuck himself. Does religion create vaccines then? Does religion thwart gravity? Can religion get a manned craft beyond Earth's atmosphere or land a probe on a comet? As your article demonstrates, Dennis, the only thing religion is able to subdue is rational thought. And maybe decent hair. If you don't think nature should be worshipped because it's brutal, merciless, immoral, and compassion-free, how much more unworthy of your devotion is the being who not only created that mess, but demands we agonize through this immeasurable amount of injustice and suffering. Nature never ordered people to commit genocide, kill homosexuals, or allowed the rape and forced marriage of female prisoners of war like your God, Dennis. Nature is bad enough, yes, but your God, Dennis, adds to the immeasurable amount of injustice and suffering almost infinitely. If nature shouldn't be worshipped, how can you encourage people to worship the creator of that nature, Dennis? How can you not put 2 and 2 together here? Although, based on this essay, you probably just can't count that high. For PragerFU, I'm me. Thanks for watching. With Wix, you can make a professional website that looks stunning. Just go to wix.com and... Okay, I can't lie to you. I have never made anything with Wix, but the important thing here is to go to my Patreon page. So many of you have written to me, sometimes with tears in your eyes, because you can't figure out how to help me keep these shows going, and you're afraid this enlightening, humorous content will disappear. Of course, I always include the links in the description below the videos on YouTube, right here. That's the best way to help. Just go to Patreon and set up your support. It's so easy, and once you set it up, you never have to think about it again, or think about it again. What could be better? You can rest assured that your contribution is going towards ridding the world of religious bigotry, intolerance, ignorance, and bad hair. Though I may not be able to do anything about the hats. You can choose how many videos per month you want to support and at what amount. The first 3 videos are always religion-oriented, so if you don't like my views on other subjects such as politics, just limit your support to the first 3. Even $1 per video helps. Think about it. For the cost of just 1 cup of coffee each month, you can help me change hearts and minds, and hopefully with your donations, underwear. Can you think of anything more simultaneously meaningful and disconcerting? You know, the good book says, many are called, but few are chosen. Well, I say, to hell with that. You're all chosen to help me help you help me. I can't think of anything more mutually beneficial for me, and I don't think you can either. So that settles it. Your decision is made. You click away, and I'll be here inciting my ass off. And the next time one of these videos goes up, you'll feel all warm inside knowing that it's up because of you. And to everyone who's already supporting these shows, you know what I'm gonna say. Thank you, 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 and I'll see you real soon. Although I guess that's up to you, isn't it?